up, everybody? Cinephile Mike here. I have the pleasure of sitting today and talking with director and writer Franz Böhm and producer Hayder Rothschild Hoozeer for the Oscar shortlisted film Rock, Paper, Scissors. Gentlemen, how are you today?
Very good. Glad to be here.
Very well, thank you.
So,
Yeah, yeah. Thank you
I'm
for the
really
opportunity
excited
to
to
speak.
jump into this film because I saw it a year ago. So, this film really, literally, it throws you into the situation immediately that we're in. It never lets up. When you were shaping this story, how conscious were you of building something that's just gonna latch in and keep its claws sunk in until the very end?
It's a good question. I mean, I would say that, first of all, thank you very much for these very kind words about it. I think we had a few very specific goals with this particular film. We had goals when it comes to the message of the film, when it comes to the character, but we also had goals when it comes to the world that we're in. And I think that's what you're referring to. Um, and in this way, we wanted to craft a very, very reduced, almost like a small film, a film where the stakes become clear quite early on and where it's all about the character-driven actions. It's all about Ivan's decisions. It's all about Ivan's journey and about how he uses his environment and the characters around him to fulfill this journey and to fulfill his task and his challenge. So it was a very, very, I would say, a very conscious decision to craft it that way. We also wanted to make sure that the film starts, or the opening starts with an sort of an everyday situation. We didn't want Ivan to be outside of that bunker already. We didn't want him to be engaging with the Russian soldiers already. That wouldn't have felt right. So it was a very, very conscious decision. And I think it was defined by us, head of departments, and the entire team discussing the audiovisual language, discussing the emotional beats, discussing the script over and over and over again. We had a lot of time to prepare for this shoot and for this particular project. So I think that really helped in that process.
And with that, when you talk about that prep time, the cinematography really places us right beside him. It's almost like a documentary style in the immediacy of this film. So, what were those conversations like when you were trying to decide how to frame and create those key visual choices to create proximity, danger, and that scope?
Yeah, I mean, I had worked with the DOP before. Her name is Sunshine. She's absolutely, absolutely wonderful. And again, I'm grateful for also for Hader for enabling us to have these conversations, these really important key discussions early on. We've spent a lot of time testing, location scouting, watching films together. We had meetings where the editor of the film would join, where the production designer of the film would join, just to speak about how do we want this film to feel. The sound designer would join. How do we want this film to sound like? How do we want the texture of the film to be like? There are a lot of
Mhm.
decisions to be made there, and these decisions were made very, very early on. We spoke a lot about the audiovisual language of the film. We spoke, for example, about the fact that the audience of the film should never be smarter or ahead of Ivan himself. We always share the same knowledge status with our main character. When he is out there, when he's approaching the Russian soldiers, the camera is almost there with him. When he's hiding down, the camera is hiding with him, together with him. The camera is almost never more than like 2 or 3 meters
Yeah.
apart from him, except the only time that this happens is when he is actively looking around, when he's not sure where to go, when he's scanning the environment. So all of these were obviously very conscious decisions. And I think the cinematography that you can see in the film really again is the result of a lot of these discussions and of a lot of preparation that went into this.
And so, Hayden, that's going to bring me to you. So, as the producer on this, right? how did you balance, creative support, wanting to tell this story with logistical reality? Because I'm sure there were technical demands and technical restraints in different facets. So, how did you go about approaching this, especially given the sensitive subject matter of the film?
Yeah, that's a great question. Working with our HODs and working with Franz, there was such a sense of coherence because of the level of prep that we've had. There was a clear understanding of what we were trying to achieve and what was protected and what wasn't protected, so to speak. There was a lot of decisions where we understood that if we wanted to have the impact that we want, the authenticity of these certain scenes were really important. And with making films at this level, we're very budgetary constrained, we're very time constrained. So the fact that we had a sense of coherence quite early on with all the HODs meant that there was time for me to be able to build those relationships across all these different elements. And that meant that we could find those things for maybe not a lot of money, or to try and transport a lot of that stuff into the middle of a mountainous area, or even when we're working within the bunker versus the exterior. There was such a clear idea of the emotional setting of the bunker, that the way that it's, being a current conflict. What does that look and feel like for people? There's warmth in that bunker. It's people whose lives, they're trying to continue and move forwards with their lives, even in these strenuous times. And that reflects the reality of what's happening outside. But working with Franz, working with the cinematographer, the production designer, building those spaces with such clear idea of what that looks like in reality, and then following Franz's leadership to make sure that everything that we were doing was very meticulous and specific. There was a lot of time that we had, like Franz was saying, that in rehearsals, for example, to be able to really play and figure out exactly the intention of Franz and the rest of the filmmakers, so that when we came to shoot the film, it was about executing. So that all of the time that we had on set, all of the different shots we had on set, even working with these actors are coming from Ukraine. We brought these guys over from Ukraine, um, to be able to kind of work with them in a way that helps create a space that feels safe and feels engaging for them. Because for us, it's a film, but for these guys, this is their lived experiences.
Mike, I have to jump in here. Hayder's not giving himself enough credit. You have to imagine this project had, very limited resources, and um, Hayder was able to bring over actors from Ukraine, where there's martial law and everything in place, which
Yeah.
was obviously a very, very complicated task. And I think the entire production department, which was obviously led by Hayder, enabled us from the first day of rehearsals, and then also from the first day of shooting. Everything was just there. The actors were there, the uniforms, all of them original, were there. All the props were there, the production design. It just worked, and we were able to create a very performance-centered set as a result of this amazing pre-production work.
And it all works because, like, watching the film, you wouldn't think that, because like the quality is that high, that to hear that is fascinating. And you were talking about bringing in the actors and working with them and all this pre-work, and you referenced him, but I do want to talk about Alexander for a minute. I plays Ivan. He carries such an enormous amount of emotional weight in this film, and often without any dialogue.
Mm.
What was your process like working with him to make sure you balanced, the fear, the resolve, the restraint, and honor the real life subject that this film is about? What
Mm.
was that like?
I mean, I will start by saying that for me, the entire cast of this project was incredible. Alexander is, for me, one of the most talented, wonderful, and experienced actors I've ever worked with. It was a real honor to collaborate with him, and he brought a lot to the table. I think the first thing that, again, where I just want to sing his praises is that the amount of energy and commitment and ideas and creative spirit that he brought on set, that he brought to every single day of the rehearsals, that he brought into the preparation, I think inspired fellow cast members, myself, the team to work even harder. He made it very, very easy to work with him, which I think helped us in getting a lot of time for different takes, a lot of time for different experiments. When it comes to all the different scenes that he plays in, it was really wonderful to prepare all these scenes together with him. We had this little strategy of having like 5 elements, 5 sort of emotional, creative elements for each scene, and we were always reminding ourselves of these elements before we've shot the first take of each scene. And then we would be able to react to that a little bit. We would say, actually, let's forget about, element 4 and therefore fully focus on element 2. Let's keep in mind element 3 is there. I wasn't able to see that in this take just now. So it was a really wonderful, I think, a very honest collaboration that we've had. And again, I'm I really want to appreciate the fact that he did all of this whilst his home country was still and still is in this really brutal war led by Putin. So the fact that he was able to focus on this project, I think is really, really incredible. Hayder, maybe you want to say about his friend as well.
Yeah, his circumstances. So it was what was incredibly unique to our production, which was actually quite um, sobering, was that on arrival, so we had managed to get special dispensation from the Ministry of Culture in Ukraine to be able to bring Alexander over to the UK to film. As Franz mentioned, there is martial law there, so if you're fit at fighting age, you're expected to serve in the military of your country. So to bring him over was very special in the first instance. So we brought him over about 5 days before production, and during his transit on his arrival, he'd learned that his best friend was killed in an airstrike in Kiev. And me and Franz, we had a very serious conversation about whether, I think, this, at the end of the day, this is just a film. Whereas this is his real life. That's more important. That's his friend. That's his family. That's his. We should postpone the shoot. We should. This is horrendous that this has happened. And we spoke to Alexander, and there was a sense of quiet resolve in his decision to move forwards with the filmmaking. He said that he felt that the responsibility to tell the story was so much, much, much more now, because he understood the impact and the intention of what we are looking to achieve. And what we have achieved with this film was cultural advocacy, to be able to tell Ivan's story so that it is never forgotten. And that, much like Ivan's story and even Alexander's friend's story, this is a reality for many people who don't get a chance to have their story told. So for Alexander's bravery to continue to tell this story in this film, I think that is what bleeds on screen. So those moments that you see, with those very intimate moments that you see for Alexander, some of that stuff mirrors his own reality.
That's beautifully said, and I'm getting moved here now just thinking about all those pieces. It's giving the film a whole new set of, comprehension for me. Um, so just to kind of to start to wrap it up, I would love to ask, and I love to ask this question of, filmmakers, producers. It's kind of a two-parter. One, now that you've worked on this project and you've both worked on others previously, and I'm sure this one you learned a lot. What would you say is one of your greatest lessons and best practices that you like to take with you from project to project? And what would you say is one of the greatest learning curves that you've learned how to kind of sidestep in your process?
I can go first if you're thinking, Franz.
Go for it. Thanks. That helps.
This one's
I
usually a
think
stumper.
for me, I think 'cause this film is marks a major milestone in my filmmaking career. You know, I started off as a runner, and I've worked my way through the different roles in the industry. And this film is a major milestone, not just because of the success that it's had, but in terms of the learning process, because th- there's a lot that I've learned from friends in that there is preparation and confidence in the storytelling. You know, there is with film and with art, there's a lot of room for ego. And with especially when you're working with many collaborators,
Mhm.
you know, there's a lot of room for many different egos. And sometimes that can muddy the waters in what the reality of what you're trying to achieve, which it should be the film and the storytelling. And I think that the biggest takeaway for me from this whole project, from working with Franz, working with all the team, is that there was no ego whatsoever. It was a sense of coherence and unity. We all understood what the weight and responsibility of this film when the storytelling was. And that came through every aspect of the technical and the creative elements of the storytelling. You know, the sound design with the music is so integrated into the storytelling, the cinematography, even the direction, the acting, the sense of the storytelling. There is a sense of mature filmmaking that I admire in Franz and then with all of the collaborators on this project, that going into anything further now, something that I'll always take with me, even as something as simple as bringing the editor onto the recce's and onto the set. You know, that was something I've never seen before. It was something that was prioritized and really wanted to prioritize, and we made that happen. And understanding the value of having these people during the whole filmmaking process, it takes away from this idea that people are servicing the project. You know, that these people, the editor doesn't come and service the project. They're an integral part to the storytelling, and therefore they should be involved from the very start so that you can have this sense of coherence in the storytelling. So that's a huge, huge learning lesson that I learned from this project, from Franz, from the team, and it set a really high bar that I'm really worried that anybody else I'll ever work with that isn't Franz and isn't anybody from the team, I'm really worried about how they're going to keep up with that. You know, we'll have to create that space for everybody else going forwards.
Well, that's very kind, Hader. Thank you very much for the kind words. I think two things come to mind, two elements come to mind for me. First is similar to what Hader was just saying, is the detailed preparation. And again, this is something that was very much enabled by the production department, by Hader. But being able to be out there on location again and again and again, going through the shot list, experimenting with different lenses, experimenting with different like editing styles, experimenting with different like camera styles, cinematography styles. All of that I think was very, very valuable, and I think increased the confidence we had on the shooting day a lot, because we were there before. We know exactly where to put the camera, but we also know the goal of each shot and the goals of each scene. Being able, especially in the exterior locations, to be there also with cast way ahead of the shooting, just being there, looking at everything, asking all the questions that we needed to ask. Why is he here, not over there? Why is he seeing them here and not over there? Should they really come across this ridge, or should they be further down the line? All of this, being able to discuss all of this was wonderful. And then secondly, I think the love and care. This is something that I would love to have on all future projects. The love and care that every single crew member, not just the head of departments, but really every single crew member, every single cast member, even the supporting actors brought to this project. It was incredible. Oftentimes, problems would get solved before they became actual problems, because people were thinking ahead, because people, oh, I think we were all making the same film. People understood, actually, if we're doing this shot next, then clearly this and this needs to be moved, or clearly this and this will be needed. So that was a really wonderful dynamic and a really wonderful experience.
Nice. And the last question, I know I have to let you go. I'm keeping you too long, but I just, to close out, after people spend some time in this world that you have created, what are you hoping people take away from the film when those credits roll?
Well, I can go first this time, Hader, and then gives you a little bit
Yeah.
of time. Well, it's the heartbeat behind the headline. It is the individual experience behind the staggering numbers that we often hear about Putin's war. I think storytelling is an integral and an essential part of human culture in the first place. And that's what the film is trying to do. We're trying to have a dialogue with the audience. We're trying to imagine, the film tries to imagine what this couple of hours must have felt like for Ivan. And it's a very, very strange world at the moment. A lot is happening. There are a lot of conflicts across the globe. And I think the next few years will be defined in a negative or positive way by how much empathy we have for each other and by how much understanding we have for each other. And I think that's the film is trying to contribute a very, very small part to this large debate.
Yeah, I think, just to kind of echo Franz as well, I think for me especially, storytelling shapes how we see the world and each other. And I think for audiences that watch this film, it's an opportunity to confront the audience with the reality of being human. If they spend 2 minutes talking about the film and 10 minutes about the realities of what's happening right now, I think that I would say that then we've been successful in our mission with this project and with this film. I think people sometimes overlook the power of filmmaking. If you go outside right now, and I bet you any money actually, you go outside right now and you stop anybody on the street and you ask them what their favorite film is, I bet you they'll have an answer. And that's how important cinema is to society. That's how important filmmaking is to society. Storytelling is one of the oldest crafts in the world. You go into these caves and you see these drawings.
Yeah.
This is humans' way of rationalizing and understanding their reality around them. So for me, what I would want audiences to walk out of this of the cinema or walk away from this film with is that to reflect on their fellow humans and to think about what that feels like and what that looks like if it were them.
So well said. Well, both of you, thank you so much for taking the time to chat about this film with me. It's a beautifully tragic piece of art that, like I said, I saw a year ago. It's held space. Thank you for creating this, sharing it with the world, and best of luck as it continues on its journey.
Thank you.
Thank you very much,
Thank you
Mike.
so much for the opportunity. Yeah.